Here are some shocking facts you didn't know about the Minions. If there's a group of animation characters that are universally adored, it has to be the Minions. These banana lovers with a funny way of speaking have their fans waiting with bated breath for the release of their movies. If you fancy yourself to be a huge fan, assess your knowledge of them with the number of facts you already know from our list. Number 1. Baldness is prevalent. It might not be obvious, but the yellow creatures have at least 6 types of hairstyles. These help us in telling them apart because, let's face it, these small dudes look pretty similar. A deeper look into these hairstyles and one thing is evident. They suffer from every man's horror, baldness. You don't believe me? Well, let me break it down for you. The first type of hairstyle is the comb over, and Stuart is the best representative of the hairstyle. Next is the sprout hairstyle, which is sported by Kevin and gives the impression of a small plant sprouting. We then encounter the spiky hair, which is found in Otto. Then there's the short hair hairstyle, which is worn by several minions like Jerry, who's Stuart's best friend. Now, these are the group of minions that have at least a head full of hair. The other groups have a little hair or none at all. This is the case of Bob. Though he's the most childlike among them all, he doesn't have a single strand on his head. If you think that's bad, wait till you see Mel. He has hair only on his sides, an indication that he once had hair on his head, but some fell off. Well folks, if you also live for over 1,000 years, baldness is expected. Sending hugs to you, Mel. Number 2. One voice character. The creators of this movie reveal that there are 899 of these small creatures. Now, what might not be obvious is that any words that's been uttered by the minions has been voiced by one voice actor, the Frenchman Pierre Coffin. Pierre started off as the director of the first Despicable Me movie, and has been involved in the subsequent films in the franchise. Of course, some of the voices have to be altered with effects, but it's impressive how he's mastered Minionese. Number 3. Loyal, but not so smart. Once you get over the fact that they are cute and hilarious, one thing is apparent though. They are not very smart. This can be seen in some instances throughout the franchise. For instance, the first time we encounter them, one of Gru's helpers hits another with a hammer on his head. Furthermore, we realize that they constructed the pyramids of Egypt upside down, which is not really right. In another scene, the group of our little buddies accidentally fumble with Knuckles' coffin, and one of their members comes out of it eating a banana. This means that if they didn't trip, the minion in the coffin would have been buried alongside the bananas, which would have been a tragedy, but it's hard to hate the little guys. Number 4. Boss killers. While the love for these yellow stallions are universal, this couldn't be far from the truth for their past bosses, who ended up dead because of the minions' actions. To start us off, we have Count Dracula, who the little creatures turn into dust when they open the window curtains, disregarding the fact that vampires evaporate when exposed to sunlight. Another instance involves a caveman who, when faced by a bear, has a club in hand to defend himself. However, the minion suggests that he use a prehistoric version of a fly swatter. He ends up being turned into shreds by the bear. The same scenario repeats itself with the Tyrannosaurus, who ends up in a volcano because of them. The Pharaoh, too, encountered his demise with his subjects when they were crushed by the pyramid. Not to mention, they blew up Napoleon into smithereens. Not gonna lie, I wouldn't want the minions to be under me. Number 5. Immortal. Though they've led many of their bosses to their death, these little creatures doesn't seem to have the same predicament. They emerged millions of years ago alongside the earliest microorganisms on Earth and are still alive to date. Furthermore, in the first movie, we see one of the minions drink Dr. Nefarious's anti-gravity potion and float off peacefully into orbit, which shows that they do not need oxygen to survive. When Scarlet's husband tried to torture the 3 minions in the first movie, he failed miserably because their small bodies seem to stretch effortlessly. This goes to show that if there's ever a global catastrophe, the minions would be the only survivors. Number 6. They can't smell. Earlier on, we discovered that the minions do not rely on oxygen for survival, which pretty means that they don't have lungs. This means that they are not made like humans. We can therefore conclude that they don't have noses, nor do they have any sense of smell as they don't have to breathe. This becomes apparent in the second movie, when Gru launched a stink bomb into the movie theater. Only the villain, wearing a gas mask, and the minions completely unprotected remain in the theater. This shows that they have little to no sense of smell. Number 7. They are evil. Despite their cute demeanor, we should not be misled. The minions have one goal in life, and that's to follow the most evil being they can locate. This explains how they landed in the US and found Gru, after the young boy effortlessly stole the Queen of England's crown in front of everyone. Furthermore, when Gru hangs up his evil boots for the sake of his family, the minions rebel and abandon their boss. And to prove their level of evil, when they end up in prison, they quickly rise up in the ranks to become the most feared group and take control of the other groups. This shows that when it comes to being bad, it's hard to outdo the minions. Number 8. They have no empathy. Not only are these creatures evil, but it's evident that the minions have no empathy for one another when something terrible happens to one of their own. One example is when one of them gets abducted. The other minion doesn't give a hoot to come to the rescue. Or when one of the minions transforms into a purple monster. The other minion just laughs and doesn't make a move to call for help. Maybe knowing that they're immortal and immoral causes them to not have a care for each other. Number 9. They've consumed illicit stuff. In one of the minions' shorts, where we see 3 of them head out for camping, some peculiar stuff happens. But none of them can top the scene, where they consume hallucinogenic fruits and have a different view of the world in its colorful glory. This further supports the theory that they are immortal, as they can consume anything and still survive. Number 10. Lord of the Rings connection. Most people don't know this, but there's a link between the Minions and arguably one of the most renowned fantasy franchise, Lord of the Rings. In the distant past, when the creators of Despicable Me were coming up with character designs, some of them turned to the orcs for inspiration. However, this being a children's show, the idea didn't really go too far. They then turned to the sci-fi universe and landed on the Jawas of Star Wars. They took their short stature, their ability to perform tasks, and their funny way of talking with unique voices. Since the minions had to be associated with current times, they were colored yellow and branded with work overalls. No doubt these unique creatures have us on the floor dying with laughter, so if you want to catch more interesting facts about your favorite animation characters, be sure to subscribe and watch out for more content.